let us see if this worked. Hoping I got it right. Don't know. Oh, okay. It is working. All right. I was just like, I don't see the live stream on YouTube whatsoever. Hello, everyone. Thanks for letting me know the sound works. Then I'll stop what I was doing and go back to where I was because I was a little bit confused there for a moment. Hello, Brazil. So where is this live stream on the actual site? I feel like I shouldn't even look at this thing right now. I should just focus on you guys. There it is, live now. All right, I just kind of want to see. I'm probably going to close that window. I don't want it to affect the computer. But right now we are using a different type of streaming software. It looks low res. I chose 720p just to see what happens. But I feel like, I don't know. I don't know. We'll try something here really quick and see. Let me switch this thing to full screen. That might be better for me. Full screen. And I'm using some software that is new. And it is called Ecamm. And it works for the MacBook. And it replaced all the other stuff I've used. And I got to try this out the other day on Facebook in the middle of the night. Some of you may have tuned in and watched. Some of you may not have. And I was happily surprised we didn't have lag and that it worked. But we have to see what's going to happen next. So let's give this a shot and see what's going on. I think I just saw someone, I don't know, it went by really quick. I could have sworn someone liked my Rebel shirt. So yeah, I got this at Comic-Con. Speaking of which, I will just say that I'm a little bit disappointed. I had my official Comic-Con mug, but I was not able to buy a Comic-Con ticket today. And they sold out within the hour. So we will see what happens when they do open registration in a few months. But for now, I have no ticket for next year, and I'm very annoyed. And I'm going to try not to let that affect the stream. I want to talk about some goodies I have over here, things I've already talked about, but I'm going to give you some updates on the products. But I wanted to talk about food today. So I do want to show you this. Let me see if I can find it. So this software lets me play with it a little bit, and I haven't really learned it very well yet. It's almost like you have to learn it on the fly. But then as we use this week after week, we may discover that we love it. Don't know for sure. But for example, Virginia says hello, and I can do this. And she says hi. And it's kind of cool to be able to do that, to be able to put it on the screen somewhere. So I'll be able to drop in some chat boxes in here directly from what you're posting. So, all right. I don't want to waste any of your time. I want to get to the point. I want to talk about food because it is a daily thing with our aquariums. And a lot of times people tend to try one method only or they just guess. And I thought, well, I've got a huge article about this on melevsreef.com that, of course, I highly recommend you read over. Just pour through the information when you have some time. But it's nice to talk about these things face to face to kind of get some information before your eyes. When it comes to food selection, normally what we base our decision upon is how does the livestock respond, and especially how do the fish respond. If the fish are very happy and they gobble it up, we're happy, and if they seem to ignore it, like a cat might do with cat food, then we worry and we start thinking, well, this is no good, it's a bad product, when necessarily it could just be the fish is finicky. So let's not rule things out. Heidi asked a question here really quick. I will drag this onto the screen. Let's move it up a little bit here. And so there is a product on the market called Mastic, and it basically is almost like you peel it out, and it's like a putty that can stick to the glass, and the fish can nibble on that spot right there on the glass. That is one method. I personally have not tried it. I need to move this so I can get to the little clear of the box. I wanted to suggest there are three choices. You have, of course, flake food. You have pellet food. You have frozen food, and then you have microfoods, which are like, for example, microfoods might be the food from Polyp Labs. Somebody help me with that name really quick. Why do I draw a blank on the stream? But Coral Frenzy comes to mind. That's another brand. Goniopora food. The Goni Power from Two Little Fishies is a microfood. The Reef that I've started using recently that you use about 3 times a month. And that's a video that's coming out very soon. That's another one that you can use to feed your corals. And then it comes down to whether you're going to target feed or if you're broadcast feeding. And broadcast means that the food goes everywhere in the tank. I also want to mention that it's ideal to keep the food in the tank and not flowing down into the filtration underneath or into the all-in-one filtration behind your aquarium. We want your livestock to eat it, not just waste and rot inside the filtration itself, like in a filter stock, for example, or in some kind of floss padding where it's just sitting there rotting. These are things we want to avoid. I see Reefroids. That's it. Thank you very much. That was the one. And then I see someone mentioning my favorite food, and I've actually been using this for a long time. It's Rod's Food. And Rod's Food is a product that has been around the market for a very long time, probably 15 years or longer. Rod was a hobbyist before he was a fish food vendor, and he raised the most beautiful onyx clownfish. And on the front of their package is Mama, the original fish that bred so many thousands of clownfish. My only regret is that I never got any of his clownfish when he was breeding, because that's all in the past and you can't do it anymore. I use some of his food in my mixture every single night. So let us talk about also what to do with the food as you pull it out of your freezer. For example, you could take, I've seen people do this. They will just break it and throw the chunks in the tank and let the tank melt it, and the fish are biting it. And I've watched Spock do that sometimes, my big Nassau tang. And it was funny, I threw in some food that didn't quite melt the other day. I thought it was done, and I poured it in, and there was this big clump, and she was chomp, chomp, chomp. And the first thought that popped into my mind was, do fish get brain freeze? Because I definitely do. And she seemed completely unaffected by the fact that she was eating some really frozen pieces of krill. So I don't know that they even have the temperament or the ability to get a brain freeze. But, you know, if you're a Slurpee person, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, some people are very concerned about nitrates and phosphates, and they say they rinse their food before they put it in the tank. Myself, I never rinse the food, and that could be why I have nitrate in my tank. But I feel like when you thaw the food out and it becomes a slurry, and you pour that in the tank, the big pieces, of course, get gobbled up by the fish. The finer bits of food will blow around in the tank, and corals can catch it. And my reef grows. So I tend to believe that what I'm doing works perfectly well, other than my nitrates being rather high. Now, the people that rinse, I'm very curious, and if you're watching in this live stream right now, and you can comment, or later if you're watching it after the stream's over, I want to know if you are rinsing your food out, your frozen food, which means you're soaking it, you pour off all the water, and then you take the food itself and you use it in the tank, and you don't have the water full of phosphate. What are your nitrate and phosphate levels if you are a rinser? That's what I want to know. If you don't rinse, I don't care. Because I'm very curious what your numbers are. And if they are super crazy low, or even at 0, maybe you don't need to rinse. Maybe you should bring it up a little bit. You know, it comes down to how is your livestock doing? How is your reef doing? And do you have an algae problem in your tank or not? I mean, these are all, that's a broad statement, but it's all part of the ecosystem we're trying to keep. And when you set up a tank with a bunch of rock and you put a bunch of fish in there and you put in some pretty corals and then the algae starts taking over, you start doing desperate things like, I'll only feed once a week or only feed every 3 days. And I totally disagree with that method. I feel like feed your tank. Always feed your tank. Keep your fish healthy. Keep them fat and sassy. But don't restrict your tank because you're scared of some algae. Algae is just plants. It's just like me saying, well, I'm not going to water the grass because I don't want to mow it. I mean, I just have to mow it. That's just part of keeping a nice lawn around my house. So I would highly recommend that you not fear feeding your tank. Feed your tank. You can feed it once a day. You can feed it multiple times a day with smaller portions. But I eat all day long. Could be why I'm slightly overweight right now. But, it's because I snack on all the wrong stuff. So that transitions me into what is a good food versus what is one that is not so good. And typically we always say, oh, flake food, bad, bad, bad. That's, kind of comparing it to brine shrimp. It's just potato chips for your reef. But flake food has its purpose too. And there's different ones on the market. Some of them purport to have additional ingredients that will benefit your reef. Sometimes it's just convenient to have it and to do a quick feed, because I feed my tank every single night right at 10:25 p.m. and the lights turn off at 10:30. And if I have not gotten up, 25, 30 minutes earlier and thawed out some food, I'm racing to melt food very fast before the lights turn off. And that it's kind of a pain. And wouldn't it be nice to just grab some flake food and throw that in the tank really quick before the lights go out? That's my point. But is flake food wrong? Is it something you can't use? No, I wouldn't say that. Matter of fact, many years ago, I got this beautiful, huge red Goniopora from a hobbyist in the area, and that's a difficult coral to keep. I mean, period. And I asked the guy, what are you feeding it? And he said, flake food. And I could not believe it. But I mean, the coral was massive and gorgeous, and I couldn't wait to bring it home. And of course, I didn't keep it alive. It died in my system. But flake food was what was his method of choice. And I'm very interested in the different choices people use. If you're using auto feeders, you need to use a food that will, and I'm sorry, for those of you who don't know what an auto feeder is, an automatic machine that will just turn and drop in either pellet or flake food. If you're using an auto feeder, food choices matter because they could clump inside there or not even fall out. And we want to make sure that they are trickling into the tank and, of course, getting into the water rather than just floating on the surface and going down the drain. I have a little gizmo that I put on top of my tank. I call it an auto feeder chimney. And the box hangs beneath the auto feeder, which is right here, and the food goes in, sits on the water, and my fish instantly devour it. They're actually circling like sharks, waiting. They know exactly what time of day it is. They are ready to the second when that food's going to drop, and then they're gobbling it. And as like Spock takes mouthfuls of water and food, it comes out her gills, and then it blows down, and the vortex blows the food across the tank, and all the fish go into a frenzy. They get very excited. Now, if you wanted to use different frozen foods, there's many on the market. Like I said, I mentioned Rod's Food. There's P.E. Mysis. There is Larry's Reef Frenzy. There is the stuff from Hikari. There is San Francisco Bay. I use a little bit of everything. I love fish eggs. I love Reef Nutrition, which is a bunch of bottled foods, including arctopods, which I think are awesome. Arctopods are actually... well, the color of them is little red dots, and they're pod-based, and so when you squirt that into your tank, fish like Anthias that really need good, high-quality food can devour a whole bunch of that. And it's so easy to just pop the cap on the top, like on the top of a shampoo bottle, and just squirt some in, and then put it back in the fridge and keep it cold. If you leave food out on the counter overnight, which everyone does at some point in their life, the question always arises, can I still use it? Nope. Throw it away. Don't even take a chance. I mean, yeah, maybe you could, but it could resort to problems. It's just so much smarter to just toss it and get a new batch. New frozen food, new liquid food. Food that's supposed to be refrigerated or frozen needs to stay in that condition. So I highly recommend that you do not make that mistake and try to use it. One of the things you can do with food that you've left out is do the smell test, and you can see if it smells disgusting. But really, ideally, just accept it as I made a horrible mistake, go back to the fish store and buy another package and toss that one out. Now, certain foods you may decide I want to premix with water so it will sink into the water better. And that would be the powders, like the Reef Chili, the Benareef, the Coral Frenzy. These are all different ones. They're powders. And you can take a small container, put in some tank water, put in the amount of food you want to use, the powder, stir it up so it becomes kind of a wet, I mean, it's not even a slush because there's mostly water, right? And then you can take a turkey baster and you could squirt it towards specific corals. And one of the methods of feeding corals that way would be to stop the pumps in the tank specifically for about 10 or 15 minutes. And that way you can squirt the food toward the corals and let the coral capture it. And then you could even do it 2 or 3 times. Like you could do it, wait 5 minutes, hit those corals again, wait 5 minutes, hit those corals again, and then turn your pumps back on. Please don't forget to turn on your pumps. And in that regard, when you've fed this way, you've allowed these corals to absorb food. So which corals might like to be target fed? Goniopora, acans, Lobophilia and different types of large pulp stonies, Tubastria, Dendrophilia, which are the dendros, or what are called fathead dendros. You can even feed zoanthids this way. That's something I've never done. I've never tried to feed zoanthids, but I know people do. I just saw this pop up here. I am trying to stay on topic and not get too distracted, but let me throw this on the screen. Someone says, what about garlic? Garlic has always been said to be a stimulant to develop an appetite, to make the fish want to eat, to get a feeding response. I'm starting to think it's being more debated and less proven. So if you want to add garlic, you can. Will it hurt your tank? Absolutely not. Does it benefit the tank? I think at this point it's unknown. And there may be a few people out there that say it absolutely does nothing good for the tank. But there are companies out there that sell garlic specifically because we kept talking about it. And so you can see a bottle of Garlic Extreme at your fish store. You can buy garlic that has been minced. It's in a jar with liquid. I used to take a spoon and put it down in the jar to get just the liquid without the actual garlic, and add that to my own food when I made my own. So let's talk about making your own fish food if you don't want to buy fish food. You can go to an Asian food store, which is typically where we get our main stock, and you will get this multi-pack of just all this frozen seafood. And the only thing in there that we don't use is going to be the imitation crab meat. And it'll say right on the package, imitation crab meat. Just toss that stuff out. But the squid, the crab meat, I'm sorry, if it's imitation, don't use it. But there's a bunch of other stuff in there. There's scallops. I haven't done this in so long, I barely remember the ingredients. But I used to do that. I used to put it in a blender. I added all these different things. I threw in some other stuff that I got at the fish store. I threw in shrimp, oyster, mussel, octopus, and then I put in spirulina, and I put in garlic, and I put in some frozen stuff that I got from the store as well, that was just, like this brand and that brand. I just wanted to get everything into my mixture so that way, and then I blend it really, really well to get it very fine. And if it was too large and too chunky, I would blend it again. And you can add a little bit of RO water if you need to so your blender doesn't jam up on the food. And you just grate it into what basically looks like a paste, and you put it in a Ziploc bag where it's flat. You actually press it down on the counter and seal the bag. And then set on top of something when you put it in the freezer so it can stay flat. Because if you put it over something, it'll come out of the freezer looking like this, and it's kind of hard to break up. But you want it thin so you can break a piece off. And you can make your own food and pack it. You could make a batch that would last you 2 or 3 months. And, you'd have like 4 or 5 little Ziploc bags of food. Others have gone to the trouble of actually pushing it into like a rubbery type of ice cube tray. And they can pop them out and have a little bin full of little kernels or little individual doses. This question here, Virginia asked. See, I'm trying to include you guys. Wish it wouldn't always go to the bottom. Is it okay to thaw with tank water and then to refreeze? I would not reuse tank water. I would just, if I thawed something on tank water, that's the amount I'm going to use. If I'm going to thaw it in, if I plan to freeze the food again, I don't know why I would ever refreeze it. Let's go that way. Why would you refreeze the food? That's what I need to know. But if you're going to do it, then I guess use RO water because it's more pure and there's less bacteria and so forth in there that would then go into your freezer. Pickle Boy, he asked the question about green hair algae. And the way to get rid of green hair algae, and that's what I started to talk about before, was that you want to remove the algae as it grows from your tank. And I had said earlier that we would, some people reduce their feedings because they're scared of algae. Instead, add more cleanup crew. Put in a bunch of mouths that are going to devour that stuff. If you don't have a sufficient cleanup crew, you're going to have algae. In my tank, you very rarely see any kind of algae at all. And that is because I have a lot of guys in there snacking, and you got hermit crabs, you got urchins, cucumbers, snails, all that stuff's moving all throughout the tank all day and all night, and they're constantly picking. There was a speaker many years ago, his name was Eric Borneman, and he said to have plenty of cows in your tank. And he compared it to a field. When you look on the side of the road, is the grass tall when there's a bunch of cows, or is it all mowed down all the time because they're constantly grazing? That's what you need, a bunch of grazers or a bunch of cows in your tank. So that's one method to reduce algae in your tank. Of course, nitrate and phosphate come into play too, but I'm just going to the thing you need to do because almost everyone I talk to never has enough cleanup crew in their aquarium. If you go to melevsreef.com/CUC, you'll find my article. That is exactly the kind of critters I would put in my tank for the cleanup crew. Jesse Wang asks, who eats Valonia? Emerald crabs, foxface fish, and Nassau tangs all eat Valonia. All right. What else do I want to tell you about food? You're going to see a video coming out this week. I'm down to like the last couple of trips of the year, and I can finally sit down to edit. I uploaded one video last night, just a vlog. And I wanted to just walk through Reefapalooza with Robert and just film our conversation. And so it doesn't feel structured. It felt more casual. And I thought that'd be kind of a nice change of pace from the type of presentations I so often do when it comes to videos from shows. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on if you liked it or not. Or, you know, yeah. I mean, obviously I'll keep track of the results. If more people like it than don't, I might do that a little more frequently. If a lot of people hate it, then I may not go that route again and let other YouTubers do that. But I took some time to talk with Jeremy of Reef because they have a jar of food, which, by the way, I ordered. That's coming in this week. I've been using it in my own reef. The really cool thing about this food is that you can use a lot of it, and it does not affect your tank in a detrimental way. My buddy Dwayne misread the instructions and used a ton of it. He was using it daily and just drowned his tank in that stuff. And what did not happen was he did not get a cyano bloom, which would be something you would totally expect from a really well-fed tank. So that right there speaks volumes to me. His food, the Reef food, has to be mixed with some tank water 5 minutes before you use it in the tank to allow the bacteria that's trapped within, that's dormant, to come to life. And then as you're putting the food in the tank, you're actually putting bacteria in your tank at the same time. And that helps to consume some of the waste that's in your system. And it's a food that you're recommended to use about 2 or 3 times a week. And so I have been trying to make that part of my new routine. And so I got a bunch of small jars in case you guys want to try it out as well. It's pretty affordable. A small jar, like I said, should last you a month or two. And you know, it's about $20. So that's coming out. Speaking of things coming to my website, these just came in. And so if you're looking for one, I have about 10 of them in stock. Now's your chance to buy it. If you're wondering what I'm holding up, it is the clip that fits on your phone. I was going to say I had my phone. So you can just take it even comes with a lens cap. You take that off. You clip it on your phone over the camera. And then when you're taking pictures of your tank, it's not crazy blue. And I've been using this now for about the last month since I got mine, or maybe a little bit longer. I got mine at Aquashella. And so I ordered some in for you guys because some of you asked me, where can I buy it? And I thought, well, hey, I can sell it. So it's in the dry goods area of my website, melevsreef.com. And the price is $35 for that. I also want to talk about this glue. So I'm changing gears a little bit here. But if some food stuff comes to mind, or if you have questions, then feel free to just come up and ask me. Let's see. Can I refrigerate excess thawed mixed food? Yes, you could for about 24 hours. I don't recommend that you put a lot of thawed food in your fridge. You know, in other words, don't thaw it a week's worth and then try to take from that all week long. I would definitely recommend that you only use what you need for the day. But if you have a little bit too much, you can put the rest in the fridge and then put that in your tank the next morning. Rocco, you know, you talk about me, you're not... Let's put it this way. Every week, you tell me, I'm going to focus on you now for a minute today. Every week you tell me people don't like the live stream. And so I'm going to focus on you today because a lot of people are watching it and a lot of people are sending me private messages and a lot of people are coming up to me in person and they're telling me they enjoy it. So I would prefer it if you would stop telling me that the live stream is a bad idea. And I welcome you to start your own YouTube channel and do exactly what you like to do best, because that way you can be happy. I'm going to do what I can with my channel to reach as many people as possible, and the live stream is part of the method. And yes, there's about 100 to 200 people that watch every Saturday and interact. And then there's about 3,000 people that watch it. And if I look at the comments underneath each of these live streams, overall they're very positive. And I would like to just continue to have a positive channel, and I will continue to talk about the things that I feel benefit the hobbyist. All right, so I want to talk about this glue, and then we're going to go into any more food questions you have. I had shown this glue to you guys a while back, but I finally got to try it, and I wanted to talk about it because I was really impressed. And I want to hear your comments on this too, because I know there's always a new glue, and every time you ever show a glue, then people will say, oh, well, I just use Gorilla Glue, or I just use the stuff from the dollar store, and it works great. Let me just tell you what happened with this one, and then I would love to hear what yours does in comparison. And if you say it's the same, that's fine. But I thought this was different. So I took the tube. The way it works is you take off your cap and you remove this plastic ring right there. And then when you screw this on, it will then puncture the tube, and it's like, and now it's open and the glue can come out of the tip. So I came home from Reefapalooza with 13 corals, and about 5 or 6 of them, maybe 7 of them needed a frag plug. So I punctured my glue, I squeezed the tube onto the plug. All the corals that had been dipping in a coral dip were now removed and put on a towel to dry them off. I then squeezed the glue onto the frag plug and took the dry coral and pressed it onto the glue. And by the time I got over to my frag tank, as I walked from the kitchen, what is that, 25, 30 feet? And I got to my frag tank system, they were secure and they weren't wiggling. They held tight. One other thing I did do, and don't let me omit that because it's part of the process, after I glued it to the frag plug, and I held it for about 10 seconds or so in position, I dipped it in my anemone cube because that's some handy salt water. I could have done it with a bowl of salt water. I just didn't think to do it. I just dipped it because it's such a big tank. And then I took it out. And like I said, then I just walked straight over to the frag system and put it in, and the stuff held super strong. Now, does the glue you buy at the dollar store do the same thing where it's holding super strong within that, I'd say, less than 90 seconds? Or do you feel like you have to kind of keep holding it and make sure it's sitting exactly right? Because this just held. And I had some big things that were leaning. And I took the frag plug, let's just pretend this was my frag plug. And I had a coral like this. And so I stuck it into the gravel like that. And it didn't fall either direction. It stayed exactly where I glued it. Very impressed with this glue. And, so good job, Polyp Labs. I am impressed. But I want to know, does it compare to what you're buying at the dollar store? Because I haven't used dollar store glue in a very long time. The newest thing that I came home with from Reefapalooza was the magnifying glass. And it comes with a large magnet that fits on the inside of your tank. So then you would just press the two together, and then it's hanging on your tank. And you can view things way down to the sand, and you can look up at corals, and you can really get a good look at things. And I've been pretty impressed, and I've been posting some pictures on Instagram shooting through it. If you haven't seen it yet, take a look, instagram.com/melevsreef. But the inside is kind of a little bit of a scrubby. You could kind of clean your glass a little bit with it, but it's such a small surface, I don't know if you'd bother. You can have it hanging this way. If your glass is thin enough, you can even make it stay right side up. I mean, that is kind of nice. On my tank, my tanks are 3/8 thick. And then I have the 400 gallon that's 3/4 of an inch thick, and it just holds on 3/4 of an inch. This is actually rated for 5/8 and thinner. So I was able to do it on 3/4, and it didn't try to slide down the glass. It didn't do anything crazy, but I would hate to drop it and break it. This is a prototype. The new one it's going to come out in 2 sizes, and I believe the price is around $30, $35 a piece. So that is something to look forward to. Some people had made comments online about, oh, they'd be great for in the distance, but actually it's not for that. It's for the things near the front. And if you really want to look at what's going on in your sand bed and you want to see the pods right along the glass and you want to see the spaghetti worms coming up, that magnifying glass is super handy. Last night I took a picture of a moonfavia about that far from the glass. And I used the Coral View lens and I used the magnifying glass and everything was cleaned up and there was no blue hue. So I was really impressed. Like I said in that Instagram post, it's the gizmos that lets my iPhone take better pictures. I know Samsung guys, they love their cameras and they say, oh, they do great every time. And that's true. I mean, I'm very impressed with Samsung pictures, but I do find these extra little attachments seem to improve the quality of the pictures I'm sharing. And so I always recommend that you have similar products that you can share. All right. One of the things that I have been using now for the last, I'd say 9 or 12 months, probably 12, is bloodworms. And I can't buy blackworms here in Texas for some reason. They sell them in California, but I can't get my hands on them. And the reason you might want blackworms is if you are trying to have a finicky fish like a copper band butterfly, and they love blackworms. So if you can't get those, the next best choice would be bloodworms. And those come frozen, and I get those at the fish store. So I go in there and I say, I need bloodworms, and they make sure they have some in stock for me all the time. And initially, they never carried them, and since I've asked for it, they're bringing it in. And so if there's a certain type of food you need or you want, and your fish store doesn't carry it, ask them to bring it in, and just wait until it shows up. Just say, here's my number. Do I need to prepay? Usually they won't say yes. And then you can just go ahead and they'll notify you when it comes in, and you can go buy the food that you want to use in your tank. So don't feel limited just because it's not available at the time or it's something that your store doesn't carry. Just tell your store you want it and they'll bring it in, because that's what those stores, they want you to come in. They want you to look around and buy corals and fish. Oh, that's a good suggestion. I just saw this. Someone said they hoped that I would talk about vermitids in a stream. I haven't really talked about that many pests on the stream yet. That is a great topic. So I will have to do that in the near future. Thanks, Devin. I see Devin's tuned in here. That's cool. There's a lot of familiar faces in here. I appreciate all you guys tuning in to catch the latest stream. That's awesome. All right. Do you guys have any questions for me? Today is a good day to ask. We've been having a lot of storms, and you may be dealing with certain things that you wish you could handle, or you're worried about what you're going to do if things go even worse. The Florida coast is dealing with horrible power outages right now. Remember, I was talking about that, a week ago, 2 weeks ago? And the weather, man, it has been crazy this year. I'm scrolling through the chat, trying to get caught up. Wow, there's a lot of you guys in here. One of the things that I've been doing on a regular basis, as soon as the stream is over, is I go find the questions I didn't answer, and I answer them on Facebook later that day. So you would go to melevsreef.com, facebook.com/melevsreef, and you'll find a video. It's usually uploaded, I don't know, by 9 p.m., and I answer specific questions I missed, and the video is usually about 11 minutes long. And it's edited, which I know you guys love. Also, I think I'm going to upload a short video about the corals I brought home from California. Both sides of my nose itched at the exact same time. Oh, it was a hair. That's what it is. I was like, what's making me itch? I came home with all these corals, and so I've got this quick video. It won't be long. Can't imagine being more than 5 minutes long, just showing what I went through. I want to use these features that are built into the software because it's so neato. So the two-part solution that I recommend, BRS sells a package that has existed for over 10 years. That works really well. I have been using products from ME Coral that works perfectly well. I've even done a video about how you can make your own soda ash out of baking soda, the Arm & Hammer stuff. And so that'll be one part, cost you nothing, and then all you need is the calcium. And of course, you'll need some magnesium. Let's see. I don't think that's a question for me. Asking about bringing corals back to Canada. Let's see. I've got a lot on my mind. I'm trying to decide what to share with you guys. It's been a very busy past few months. A quick update on the Camor pump. I showed a video of that a few weeks ago when I got it and installed it, and it worked okay, but I wasn't really in love with what I was seeing. And so I ended up boxing it up, taking it with me to California to show the people in the Coral View booth at Reefapalooza. And they just decided to just give me another one. And that one arrived yesterday, and I installed it last night. And so far, so good. All is well. But I felt like either I didn't understand how to calibrate it, and trust me, I tried 70 times easily over a 5-day period. I just tried over and over and over, and I couldn't get it to work the way I thought it's supposed to work. I wanted them to show me how they calibrate it in the booth at RAP, but they had theirs hooked up very specifically to a calcium reactor to where it was like going through the reactor instead of like dripping out. So no one would demonstrate that for me, and I ran out of time. I pressed the issue several times, and no one ever had the time to show me. So maybe I just had a dud. I don't know, but they replaced it, which is all that matters, and it's hooked up now. and it's quiet, and it's moving water through my reactor, which is exactly what it was designed to do. It was funny, too, because I was Googling, how do you calibrate this pump? And the second link in Google was my video about the pump. I was like, are you kidding me? I need information. And it was like I was the second choice on the internet of information about this pump. So, there you go. Jared asks me, do you make your own food? No, I haven't made my own food in forever. But what I do is every single night I break off pieces from multiple different packages and I combine it in a single bowl, thaw it, make sure it's all melted, and then I squirt it into, the anemone cube. I squirt a little bit into my refugium to feed my little clownfish and those 3 tiny anemones I gave them. And then I squirt it into the frag system. And then I pour the bulk of it into the reef. And then I come back and I give another little squirt to the clownfish and the refugium. And then I pour the last of it back in the anemone cube. And so I'm basically doing a double lap, if that makes sense, to feed everything in my possession, to make sure every mouth gets filled. The reason I've been using the bloodworms, as I mentioned, is because I have a copper band. I want to make sure he always has a meal. And so I'm always watching to make sure he's eating. And I watch him eat PE mysis, and I watch him eat the bloodworms, and I feel better knowing he's getting some good meaty foods in his stomach. My sea bay anemone, by the way, shrunk super tiny yesterday. I mean, really small, so I could see all the coral death. 180 degrees of death, where that anemone usually touches everything and murders everything in its reach. And right now, it is about 50% of its normal size. It did this once before, I feel like about 6 weeks ago. And when it shrunk down, I was sure that this was going to be a split. I mean, I don't know if sea bays split, but mine has never done anything but just be bigger and bigger and bigger. And it did this weird thing where it shrunk down so tiny that I thought, okay, that's different. Maybe I'm going to see 2. And nothing happened. It got big again. And the same thing happened last night. It was small yesterday. Now it's growing out again. Probably tomorrow it'll be massive and, hiding all the death, which is fine. And the reason I have the death is it's there intentionally because if there's a lot of dead sticks all around the anemone, it has no reach to reach out further. It's kind of like corralled in its wall of dead skeletons. Yeah, talking about the food and the process. Yeah, it is, but it's kind of my routine. It lets me see all the different fish as I work my way around and check on everyone and make sure everyone gets a meal. I don't really need to just dump it in and walk away. And I don't actually sit there and watch everyone eat either. I think some people do that. They pour the food in the tank and they sit back and they just watch all the activity. But I don't do that. I just kind of make sure they all get their meals. And then about 10 minutes later, all the pumps turn back on. And then about 5 minutes after that, my skimmer comes on. And everything is well in the world, and then they just wait. And then the auto feeders hit them during the daytime. Each tank has an auto feeder on it as well, which initially I installed just for feeding when I travel, but I liked it, and I've just left them running, and they're always going, and I just refill them once a month, once every 2 months, depending on if, when the container's empty. Here's a good question, something we never talk about. Hi, Mark, I got some microzoas. Do you know much about them? I know that they're itty-bitty and that they don't come from everywhere. I mean, they are very species-specific. I think they're from Indonesia, and that is all I know. So, sorry. They're pretty. Yeah, you see? Canadian reefer girl says that she watches her fish eat. That makes sense. I mean, it is the activity, and we love activity. We love things that are moving, and I don't know, I'm around my tank all day long. I look over at it 1,000 times a day. They say we all look at our phone 1,000 times a day. I look at my tank 1,000 times a day. I'm working next to it. I'm walking around it to get to the workshop. I come back past it. I see it from all angles. I go to the kitchen every time I refill my cup of coffee. I'm always looking in the systems. I'm always looking for things that are different or have changed or has something moved. Is everything okay? I love to be able to report to you that I continuously always have better and better growth in my tanks. You guys very, very rarely hear me talk about, oh my God, it's all crashing. I mean, you never hear that because I don't crash. But I don't talk about all the corals in my tank have turned white or all my fish are gasping. I mean, that never happens. And that is mainly because of the way I set up my system. I have really good high-end gear and it's very reliable. And when there's something that's not right, I deal with it sooner rather than letting it sit and idle and get worse till the point that it just breaks and fails. I'm always one step ahead, and I always have backups of everything so I can switch things out. I am going to be trying out some new gear here in the near future. I'm going to replace the MP10 on my frag system with a Nero pump. That thing is really interesting to me. I like it. It's very low profile. It'll look great on that tank. It'll move a lot of water. And I'm also going to be trying out the Clarity, which is that fleece roller system. That's going to go in my big sump. I think I'm going to make an acrylic stand for it if I can't hang it off my baffles, and see how that does, because I'm not a sock guy. I mean, I'm not even a fleece guy, but I'm going to try it. I want to see how it operates and how it cleans and how effective it is, and just see what it does. And I'll, of course, let you guys all know about that. Never say never. Yeah, I mean, it just hasn't happened. I've actually, 20 years in the hobby. My biggest disasters are when a tank decides to leak. 6 years later, it starts dripping. Or that tank, the 400 that leaked in 2012, I believe it was, and just started peeing out the side. I mean, it's got to deal with it. You just got to jump in there with both hands and get your arms wet and just deal. I kind of want to replace the anemone cube with another cube. I just kind of feel like doing a fresh tank in that spot, and maybe doing a video setting it up or transferring the livestock. That tank's been doing well. Matter of fact, the 10th was 4 years, 11 months. So November 10th will be 5 years of the 400-gallon and the anemone cube that have been running in conjunction with each other. And it just seems like it's about a good time to replace that tank, rather than just kind of waiting for it to eventually let go. I mean, it's true. I mean, silicone and glass, it's like black magic. You just don't know. It seems to hold until it doesn't. That sounds like magic to me. So, any other questions, guys? No, I think same size. I like that size. I hate rimless, so I might ask for it to have a top piece on there to make me feel better. I'd also like it to have an internal overflow box this time. With that tank, I actually built the overflow box because the tank was not drilled. It wasn't prepared, and so I had to do this thing. And there's a whole blog about it on Reef Addicts, as well as on my website, where I showed what I did. And I'd feel so much better if it was an actual permanent, built-in, designed from the beginning tank with an overflow box in the corner. That would make me happy. Doesn't even have to be low profile, just has to be part of the tank. The one that's in there right now is basically 4 walls with a solid bottom, and I put holes through the bottom, and I push the bulkheads through the holes, and the bulkheads have that flat washer. And then underneath, I put flat washers again, and then I push it down through the holes in the bottom of the PVC tank, because the bottom of that tank is PVC. And then I poured sand around it all. And so technically, I just feel like that is a non-trustworthy area. Those bulkheads are coming up on 5 years old. I feel like if I touch the plumbing, that they will probably do something horrible. And I'd rather just have a new tank with new bulkheads and do some fresh plumbing. That would make me feel good. But we'll see. That is something that I've just been toying with. It kind of hit me about 3 weeks ago. I kind of want to replace that tank. Leave it to me to come up with something. The reason I wouldn't go larger is because that tank is exactly the width as my kitchen counter. That corner fits a 24 by 24 tank perfectly. And I don't think making it taller would do anything good for the anemones. I think they would just all move up, and then I'd have even more empty space at the bottom. So that's not a real good reason either. I'm toying with the thought of maybe possibly getting another tank somewhere in this house. One of the things I'd like to do at some point, when I have money, is to remodel this house. And if I remodel this house, then I would move the office, which includes this area here. And if I'm able to do that change, then maybe I would put a tank right behind me. And I'm thinking about, NPS sounds like a great idea, actually. But what I was thinking was a cold water tank. And the reason I like the cold water tanks is because you get a totally different type of animal. Like, for example, those big, bright, colorful anemones, or an octopus, or the colorful snails that they have. They're gorgeous. And having a cold water tank would be really great because they don't need much. You have some filtration, obviously, because you got to keep the water clean. They don't need a heater because you're trying to keep the tank at 55 degrees. So basically it's just running on a chiller all the time. Doesn't need special lighting because those creatures completely rely on food rather than light to grow. You don't have algae problems because the water's so cold. So it's like a complete deviation from what I'm so used to. Matter of fact, I probably hate cleaning it because the water's so cold. But it would be so cool, and I could put it behind me and it wouldn't have the weird blue lighting, so it would film really well. And let's just pretend there was an octopus dancing around back here the whole time. You'd probably love that. So kind of playing with that thought, maybe. What do you guys think? Yeah. See, the Catalina goby is another nice little fish that can go in there. The strawberry anemones, they're real small ones. They have some really crazy looking fish that are cold water fish. There's this one, I don't even know what it eats. Man, that thing is gorgeous. I guarantee you it probably eats all the things I care about. But, wow. I mean, I saw my first cold water tank besides at aquariums where it never counts. You know, when you go to a public aquarium, you just see a big cylinder of water. You don't even know about temperature. You just see a humongous octopus and a bunch of rock. Or you see, you know, something else. But my first real education came from Steve Wiest, a guy up in Oregon who set up a cold water system. And he was teaching us all about what he had to do. And back then it was hard to get stuff. Nowadays, there's actually cold water vendors. And you could say, I'd like to get this and this and this, and they'll just get it. They'll just go out in the ocean, they'll find it. And then, you know, you're set. And they're literally doing it with permits. You know, it's not like, you know, we're raping the oceans. It's a legitimate business. They don't do anything underhanded. And because so few people want it, it can't be a corrupt business. You get 10 people in the U.S. that want that stuff. You know, it's amazing they're even in business at all. Okay, this is a good question. How to dose liquid food. One of the methods that you can do, of course, is to stop the return pump so the food stays in the tank. You can dilute the liquid food with some tank water in advance or some RO water and then pour it throughout the reef. You can target it towards certain things. But like, you know, we're talking about certain foods. For example, what if you're talking about phytoplankton? I mean, that's a liquid food. And, you know, Nanochloropsis is just, it's an algae that can be consumed by some livestock. Some things rely on it. Other things can't even break through the bubble to get to the algae within. But it is a method of growing pods in your reef. They rely on the phytoplankton. That's a choice. Oyster feast, on the other hand, goes everywhere. Myself personally, I keep buying it. I always regret it when I do because every time I put oyster feast in my tank, and I've told one of the guys at Reef Nutrition this, every time I put even a little tiny bit of my system grows cyano. So I'm not a fan of that one. But I use pretty much everything else that they sell in a bottle from Reef Nutrition, and that's all liquid foods. And you can just squirt it in your tank. You can squirt in a fixed amount, or you can just put in what makes you feel good. You know, for example, you might say, oh, I want a teaspoon. Where me, I would walk into my reef and I go squirt, and that's it, and I put it back in the fridge. So that is my method there when it comes to those liquid foods. It really comes down to what you're trying to accomplish and what kind of livestock you're keeping. You probably are going to definitely want all kinds of sorts of liquid foods if you're running a non-photosynthetic tank, an NPS tank. Oh, Marine Tank Journey just got here. He's late, so we're going to start the stream over. I'm kidding. I'm glad you're on here. But yeah, you can just dump in. Pretty much all your foods can be dumped in. It really comes down to if you're trying to grow out a certain coral. Sun corals have to be fed all the time. So you're going to have to, like every single day, you're going to, well, every night, because that's when they're open. You feed them every night, and you have to feed them pretty much 3 or 4 times in a row for that night. In other words, every 5 minutes, you hit them again with another bit of food. They close their little mouths up. They inhale that food, basically. And then they reopen, and you hit them with another piece of food, and they close up, and they inhale that food, and then they open their polyps up again, and you hit them again. And you do triple doses, and you know what? You end up with lots of sun corals. It's amazing. If you just do it passively, occasionally, you'll just watch the coral never is open, the skin between all the polyps starts receding, and you start seeing white skeleton, and soon you're down to like 3 polyps and a whole bunch of white dead skeleton because you didn't feed the coral. It starved to death. Now, there was a belief you had to feed every single polyp all the way around the entire coral and that they don't share stomachs within, you know. And I don't know that that's true, but basic husbandry really is feed as many of the heads as you possibly can. each time you feed. And if you have other things in the tank that are going to steal the food, like shrimp, blood shrimp, cleaner shrimp, peppermint shrimp, you may have to put a dome over the top of the coral. Easiest dome you can make is get a 2-liter bottle. You got a bottle like this with the top right here. Cut it about this high, so you have a dome with that little neck at the top. And then drill a bunch of holes in the body, small holes, but just enough so, not tiny holes, 1/4 inch, 3/8 inch, something decent, so flow can move through the dome. And you can squirt food through the top, and you can actually use a pipette or, that long feeding turkey baster and squirt the food onto the coral and feed it without the shrimp being able to get in and pull it off and pull it out of its mouth. That is one method. And if you don't drill the holes like I told you to do, what'll happen is the oxygen level in there depletes, and you'll watch that coral turn pale. It'll actually suffocate, especially if you forget and leave the dome overnight. So by putting a dome over the top, you'll protect it from all the sneaky guys that are trying to run over and steal the food. And then you can pull the dome off and all is good. But if you forget overnight and you remove the dome the next morning, because there was flow through the dome, the oxygen level didn't change and your coral is still intact. Corals like lobophilia definitely have to be fed. They have these big heads and they need to eat, and they're super slow eaters. I've watched people use all kinds of foods from silver sides to krill to even pellet food. And if you were to time lapse it, you can actually watch the pellets kind of migrate toward the center till they finally get sucked into the mouth, and then they finally go in and they vanish. And then you can watch a cleaner shrimp run over, reach down in the mouth, pull the food out, and run away with it. And then you have to start all over again. And it takes like 45 minutes for those corals to inhale their piece of food. So that's why the dome is so important. And just because it's out of sight does not mean the shrimp can't get it. So I've done everything. I've tried feeding the shrimp some food first and then go feed my lobo, and they would drop what they had to go steal the food. Super annoying. So you would have to be aware of that situation and just kind of, feed it all over again. Catch the shrimp. Put him in a bowl. I don't know. Put him in timeout. That's what I can tell you. Wow. Even Prestige Reef is here? Wow. This channel is getting more and more popular. I told Terrence that once I was on his live stream, I'd get popular, and I was right. I was totally right. Yeah, I think so too. I think that having a cold water tank would be really, really cool. And I know that that's a pun. So what I will be doing in the future with this stream that seems to be working is I'll be able to drop in different camera angles. And I believe I can drop in clip art and logos and all that. I just wanted to test the stream on YouTube. It worked on Facebook. I want to make sure it worked on YouTube before I spent the money on it. But I think I've pretty much resolved my live stream problem for now and don't have to buy a new machine, which is perfect because the dentist gets all my money now. And I've had a lot of people ask me, how's the teeth? What's going on? Well, there's no teeth yet. This is healing. This one's healing. What it is, there's a post in here, and I have to wait until November 19th, and then they will measure or they will do a casting for the tooth they're going to create for that spot. This one has to wait till December, where they pulled out the bad evil tooth, and then they will put me to sleep, and they will put in a post in there, and then I have to wait till like February or March to get that tooth. So this is a big, long ordeal, and it's pretty much about $5,000 a tooth. So anything you buy from Melevsreef helps feed the dentist. I don't get to keep the money. It's terrible. There you go. All right, guys. It's been an hour. Let's just stop before we get lag. How about that? Thank you so much for tuning in. Remember, today is Saturday, which means it is Water Test Saturday. Make sure you test all your water parameters like I have been doing. I actually found quite a few of these. I need to update my Reef Trace app because I have multiples that need to be entered. But you want to make sure that all your water parameters are locked in, safe and sound, or if there's any kind of adjustments, you can make them today. Because of all the storms hitting the nation, I, of course, always recommend that you clean your collection cup today. I know a lot of you think about it, like, oh, I'll do it tomorrow, and the cup's got this much stuff in it, but it's not full yet. But if something goes weird in your weather and the skimmer overflows and sends it all back into your system, you've just put all the pollutants back into your tank. So let's get that off get that off of the skimmer, in the sink, down the drain, and put a nice clean cup back on your skimmer. And I would love to see your test results. Whether you put them on Club Melevsreef, which would be awesome, or you can use Instagram. Club Melevsreef is coming up on, I think we have 2,500 people in there now. and it's continual. More and more people are joining. My big concern is a lot of people are joining that do not follow this channel, and I originally made that group for you guys. And the reason I say my concern is that people are joining is because they don't understand my personality, and they don't understand that I want a peaceful group. And they are, they're migrating from other groups where they already see aggression, and they just think they can just come over here and just be the same type person. And that is my big concern. So someone asked about a week ago, how many people have you banned from the group? How are you keeping it so peaceful? And we've only had 2 people that said this group is not for me, and they left of their own accord. And I'm very selective. I look at every single person that asks to join the group, and I look at their profile, I look at their likes, I look at the other groups they're in, and then I decide if I'm going to let them in or not. And there's quite a few that I've not let in. I said, absolutely no way this person's getting in. But most have been let in. That's why I said we're up to 2,500. Obviously, I'm letting people in. And we have some moderators that keep the peace. But that group is for friendly people to get help and to share their systems and get along. And I've made it very simple from the very beginning. I set up the group, I guess, a month and a half ago, maybe 2 months ago. And what I said was, just treat people kindly and you won't get banned. It's pretty simple. But if people are going to be mean or aggressive or put people down or, just taking shots at each other, they're not going to last and they're not going to get back in. As soon as I notice it, they're gone. And I noticed a guy a couple days ago that was definitely on my radar. And by the next morning, someone else in a different group had reported a similar situation. And I just preemptively took care of it because I want the group to be friendly. And I want you guys to feel safe. I want you to feel like we can talk about stuff and share our tanks and ask questions and not feel like we're going to be ridiculed. Because this hobby needs a lot of help, a lot of love. Thank you, Christine. Andrea, that's it. 2 months. That's what I was thinking, yeah. So no, group is doing really well. We have about 6 moderators in place around the clock to keep an eye on things. If you see anything wrong, report it and we'll take care of it. And if you need me in your thread, because there's so many new posts every single day, just tag me. Just tag me in your post, and that way I will get a notification and I will check it out. But that group is designed for you guys. It's really easy to get to. It's facebook.com/groups/melevsreef. And you're definitely welcome to join in and check us out. We're awesome. Thank you very much. How do I drag that one? Does this work? Let me see if that works. It did work. Daily Reefing, thank you very much. That was nice. I'm going to spend all of that on something. No, seriously, that was nice. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I want to finally tell you guys that... no, I can't tell you yet. I just can't. But there's other stuff in the works, and it's coming. In the meantime, I am going to be focused between building things for customers, knocking out video. So if you start seeing a lot of videos hitting the channel, I hope that you don't sit there and feel like overwhelmed. I need them off my hard drive. I need them on the channel. And I hope that you get a chance to watch them all, if you have the time. That's it, guys. I hope you have a great weekend, and I will talk to you really soon.